Hello, thank you for joining us today for this special event to coincide with the call for entries for the 4th edition of the Jerwood Photoworks Awards. I'm Harriet Cooper and I'm Head of Visual Arts at Joewood Arts. I'm really thrilled to be joined today by Julia Bunnemann, who is the Curator of Photoworks and one of the selection panelists for this edition of the awards. Artist Alejandra Carles-Tolra, who is one of the awardees for the 2nd edition of the Jerwood Photoworks Awards, and Sylvia Rosi, who was one of the awardees for the 3rd edition, the most recent edition of the Jerwood Photoworks Awards. We're also being joined by Kat Ward, who is interpreting this event into British Sign Language. And if you want to view subtitles for the event, you can turn these on at the bottom of your screen as well. So welcome. Between us, we're going to hold space over the next hour to share some of Alejandra and Sylvia's experiences of applying to the awards and being part of them. And we've also asked the audience to submit any questions that they are interested in us answering, so we'll be covering some of those in the later part of the event. I'm imagining that many of you who are watching this have been thinking about whether to apply to the awards and whether it's right for you at this moment. So we're hoping that some of our conversation today will help you reflect on that and help make a decision or strengthen applications that you're putting in. So the event is going to last about 1 hour, and we're going to start by asking Alejandra and Sylvia to reflect on the application and selection process, and then the reality of actually what it took to create their work over the time period that they had. And then to reflect a little bit on what the impact has been and where the award has then sort of taken their practice, what's been a step change from that. After that, we'll move forward to some of the audience questions. And we're going to try and round up with any ideas around top tips that we could share with you to help you with your applications. If you've got any further questions after the event that we don't cover in our conversation, there's quite a few ways to find out more info, and we'd really encourage you to get in touch, particularly if you haven't applied to the awards before or haven't thought about it. So there's a lot of guidance online that tries to cover most of the frequently asked questions that are around the awards, but you can also ask questions in a few different ways. So you can contact us on social media through @Photoworks_UK. We'll also accept emails for specific questions, and they can be sent to julia@photoworks.org.uk. And we can also book in 10-minute advice sessions, which are with members of the internal assessment panel, which includes myself and Julia, Lily and Shoa from the Joewood Arts and Photoworks teams as well. So they're 10-minute sessions where you can have a think about any questions that would really help you strengthen your application, and we can chat through and talk to you about those. So before we get started, I'm just going to hand over to Julia to tell you a little bit about the awards, just to give you a summary of it if you're shady on the details, and then I will introduce the artists and the selection panel before we move into the questions.
Thank you, Harriet, and thank you, Alejandra and Sylvia, for joining us today. So let me introduce you to the Jerwood Photoworks Awards. The Jerwood Photoworks Awards are a major commissioning opportunity supporting early career artists working with photography to make new work and significantly develop their practice. They seek to encourage artists exploring new approaches to photography. We are now running the 4th edition and are looking for ambitious UK-based artists who are between 1 and 10 years into their practice to realize new works that will result in a national touring exhibition. 2 selected artists will receive a £10,000 fee and a £5,000 production budget, with a full package of support from Joewood Arts, Photoworks and external mentors to create new work over a 12-month period. The application for the awards is free, and the deadline is Wednesday, the 12th of May, 2021 10 a.m. Important. And now I'm very happy to introduce the two artists who are joining us tonight. Let me start with Alejandra. Alejandra Carles-Tolra was born in Barcelona in 1988 and is a visual artist and educator who is currently based in London. Her work is driven by questions regarding what defines our identities, the role of the group plays in our search for belonging. She holds an MFA in photography and a BA in sociology. And Alejandra's work is part of the Arts Council collection and has been published and exhibited internationally. As an educator, she has worked for institutions such as Autograph, the Photographers Gallery, and the National Portrait Gallery, designing and delivering participatory photography workshops. She is the 2018 recipient of the Jerwood Photoworks Awards, along with Sam Loveland and Laura Ribeira. And the second guest today, Sylvia Rosie. Sylvia was born in Scandiano in Italy in 1992 and is living and working between London and Modena. She graduated from London College of Communication in 2016 with a BA in photography and works with photography, video, and text. Sylvia's work explores her personal family history, drawing on her Togolese heritage, and has been exhibited nationally and internationally. And she is the 2020 recipient of the Joewood Photoworks Awards, along with Theo Simpson. The selection panel for the 4th edition of the Joewood Photoworks Awards includes art historian and curator Christine Ayen, artist Joy Gregory, and photographer Sunil Gupta. Alongside them will be myself, currently curator at Photoworks, and Harriet, head of visual arts at Jerwood Arts. I'm now handing over to Harriet to start with the question.
Fantastic, thank you, Julia. So we thought it would be good to start at the beginning and to try and take you back, Sylvia and Alejandra, to thinking about that very long time ago when you applied to the awards. And I guess how you felt at that time and where you thought you were in your career. So first question we sort of had was, what stage in career were you at when you decided to apply for the awards? And I guess what your experience was prior to that, how did you feel the awards were really relevant for you at that moment? And I wonder if we could go to Alejandra first.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hold on, am I on mute? No. Good. So for me, it was a really interesting time because I had just recently moved to the UK. I'd been living in the US for the last 5 years. I think it had been like a year and a half or 2 years ago since I had left the university. I was doing a graduate program there. And so I suddenly found myself in a new country with no network of support, no contact in the arts. And I felt very isolated. I guess I felt very lonely in my practice. I think that would be the word to describe that time. And so I remember that I went to Brighton because there was the Photoworks Festival. And when I was there, I happened to walk into a talk where they were presenting the awards. And I remember that I felt this kind of feeling of jealousy, of positive jealousy for the awards that I had, the award winners. And I remember thinking that's exactly what I need. I had been, in the UK for a year, and I just felt like I just really needed that mentorship, that support that allowed me to continue my work forward. I think I was feeling like I was the only person that was having conversations with my work. So I was in my studio spending a lot of time just looking at my work, not really seeing the way where I could move it forward. And so I felt like this award was the perfect opportunity to allow myself to start creating some connections in the UK, but really to have a group that I knew would then support me throughout a year in developing my ideas and in also building my confidence, which is, I think, one thing that was crucial at that time. After in university, I felt like often, or in any program, if you're enrolled in something where you have some support around you, you feel like you're brave enough to take risks and try things out. But it feels really different when you feel like you're alone doing it and you're the only one who's kind of like really looking at the work. So having the opportunity to work with a group of people that would be looking at my work, giving me guidance and sharing their expertise was, yeah, definitely a good moment for me at that time.
That's really interesting that it was as much about kind of opening up your practice and bringing other voices into kind of conversation with it. I can really see how that really supports that kind of risk and experimentation. Yeah, that's great.
And share it with someone. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because otherwise it feels like, you know, you can trust yourself, but to a certain point, often you really sometimes want to just get out of yourself or your studio and just see how other people are reacting to it. And people from different kind of also fields and different types of experience, you know, not just maybe your peer artists, but also curators, editors, people in visual arts in general. So yeah, it was really, really helpful.
Amazing, thank you. And Sylvia, what about you? You were quite recently out of university as well when you applied, is that right?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, for me, the award came at a time in which I was kind of thinking of quitting photography, really. So I graduated, it was 3 years after graduation from London College of Communication. And I kind of found myself working restaurant jobs to be able to support myself while living in London. So I kind of put my practice on the side at that time. And then, yeah, it's funny now that I think about it, but at the same time I got robbed. So all of my equipment was gone from my flat. And at that time I really thought, oh, this is it. I'm not gonna take photographs now. But then I joined my mom in a trip to Togo, which is our home country. We were in Lomé, and we spent a lot of time in markets around the capital, and we just spent some time together. And I remember sitting at the market and watching this amazing parade of women carrying goods on their heads. So I took some photographs. I worked on a small series shot on my iPhone of different women and the produce they were carrying. They were all like snaps. I didn't ask for permissions, and I used them as a way to support my application. I used that series in that way. So yeah, that's that's what happened to me. And what
I think we can all say we're really glad you didn't give up.
yeah.
It's fascinating that the driver kind of to put in your application, also that the idea was really a really key part, that the idea for your proposal really drove that application in.
Yeah, it was really great to see that I didn't need a camera to be a photographer. So yeah, that was a good lesson.
Fantastic. And one of the things that I think people would be quite interested to hear was about whether you had a lot of experience applying to arts funding before, whether it was something you were regularly doing, or if there was something kind of specific to this that had encouraged you to apply.
In my experience, no, definitely not. I had a little bit of experience, I guess, applying to photo festivals. So I had submitted my work to some photo festivals where I would have to just submit some photographs and an artist statement. So with artist statements, I felt confident at that point, but not with art, for funding. Applying for funding was a very new thing for me. And in a way, I really didn't think I was going to get the award. So I convinced myself that it was still worth applying because it would be an amazing learning experience for me to apply, to really try and convince someone to give me the money to produce the work. So that, for me was kind of homework that I gave myself. I really wanted this opportunity. And even if I didn't get it, it was going to train me to, get better at funding applications and to really understand how I have to, explain myself and justify it in a clear way that could potentially give me the award.
Did you feel that you learned anything through doing it? Do you feel like it strengthened your ability to apply for funding in future?
Yes, I mean, one thing that I learned, but again, this probably is just very personal. I don't like applying to things where I have to kind of explain myself and put into words things that also as visual artists, it's kind of hard to put into words, especially at the beginning of a body of work where I don't have all the answers. And what I learned was that that's not really, what you need to focus on. What's really important is to really understand why you want that award and why is it important to you, and to be clear. And that's a very helpful thing, even for yourself, to understand. I've now applied sometimes to awards where halfway through the application, I decide not to apply because I realized that maybe I don't want it as much as I thought. I was just applying because I thought I should apply to this, but then actually, there's no really good reason for me to do that. So I think it helps in also getting a better understanding of where you are at that point as an artist, what you're trying to accomplish, and giving yourself that space, a space that usually I never give myself that space to really spend days looking through my own work and writing about it and explaining it to myself. I try and kind of put that on the side.
I think it's such a good point about thinking about why you want this, because I think from the other side of being a selection panelist on a number of awards, that's something that comes across really strongly as if there's something specific, if it's what it is and why this moment. I think when applicants can articulate that really well, it really helps helps that understanding of their ideas.
Yeah, because also as a panel member, you often ask, like, if you read the statement, you think of, oh, does this person really kind of like, what is the benefit for them to receive that kind of award? And so to make that very clear is quite important.
Sylvia, what about you? Had you been applying to lots of funding previously, or was it quite a new experience for you?
It was a new experience for me as well. I had never applied, and I wasn't really sure how I was going to do it. I remember I worked on on the application for about 3 weeks, but I didn't work on it for too much time in a sense. Like I just wrote a little bit day by day, and then saw how that writing evolved and how my ideas changed in that time. So I guess it was very much a process. So that's how I did it really. And I guess I learned I'm more organized than I give myself credit. Like for real, I just plan everything, why I want to do it and when and how the timeline is going to be and who's going to help me to do that and where I'm going to get the material. And I kind of got that out of reading my own notes and seeing how I think. And I guess that's something I learned about myself. So having the courage to apply for the award is something that I push myself towards. I usually get ideas and then I'm too scared to apply or too scared to put them out there. So I think that's an important thing that I learned out.
I think that's a really reassuring learning to realise how organised and that it's all there, it's all within you anyway.
Yeah.
I think that probably leads quite nicely onto a question that we had from the audience, and I think it's something that we've also had a few questions on advice calls already about how solid your initial idea of your proposal was when you applied. And maybe Sylvia, you could say a little bit about that, because I think you've touched on that for you it was quite clear at that time.
Yeah, I had a really clear idea of what my project was going to be, because I spent that time that in the market, which I consider kind of the first stage of research for my project. And my idea was to go back with an actual camera and take a series of portraits of women, carriers, and record all of the objects that were sold in the market. But then my idea changed completely when I was faced with the reality of being in that context with an actual camera and realizing that people did not want to be photographed by me, and that I was not that welcome in a way with a camera. So yeah, that was really interesting because it made me think of what I was doing and my intentions, and also thinking of the history of photography and all that, heritage of power games with the medium of photography. So that's when I decided to turn my camera toward myself and use the market as an inspiration to tell a story related to my family that was linked to that specific place. So that's how it changed completely. It was my intention to take self-portraits at all.
I think that will be really interesting for a lot of the audience to hear, because a question I know that I've been asked is sort of, can it change? Yeah, if you go in with a very solid idea and it changes during that period, is that okay? And I think it would be strange if it didn't change sometimes, even without a kind of very specific reason for it. There's a lot happens in a year kind of development. But what about you, Alejandra? Did you have a very solid idea for what you were proposing?
So yes and no. Yes, in the sense of the overall idea. So I was working with this group with whom I had already established a relationship with, this fictional society inspired by Jane Austen. And so I knew I wanted to continue working with this group and develop the work around themes of belonging and group identity. But the approach changed drastically throughout the award. When I applied, I felt very stuck because I felt like the work, what I had in mind and what I wanted to express and how I was expressing it wasn't matching. I felt like the work was very observational in a sense, kind of very passive, and I guess it was more in documentary in the approach of how I was working with the sitters and with the group. And I wanted to make it more performative, and I wanted to start exploring more with collaboration with the sitters and start playing with ideas of fiction and nonfiction. But it was something that I felt quite, I don't know if scared would be the word, but I was uncomfortable with it because it was something very new for me. It was a different way of working. So, getting the award allowed me to then take the risk and really change the project in a completely different direction. So I started creating staged photographs, which I hadn't done before. Started really working with the sitters in planning some of the shoots where, for months I would be looking at some references that were given to me by the group itself, artistic references that inspired them, that then I would allow that to inspire my practice. And then together we would create some kind of image. So that was a very different way of working for me. And it definitely took the work in a very different direction. And yeah.
That very collaborative nature, that has been quite a huge shift and quite unpredictable at times. So it's really, I can really hear how you're reflecting on that, being able to do that in an environment that was supportive and allows you to do that and succeed and fail in different ways kind of works.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how I felt, that, it could fail miserably. It could become like very cheesy or terrible. But I felt like at least I had that kind of support with whom I could get some kind of guidance. And I think that gave me then the confidence and the courage to actually try out some ideas that I had been thinking about doing for years, even with previous bodies of work that I was always uncertain. And so having the confidence that there are other people that can give you their feedback, their guidance, and that also, they've already told you that they believe in your work, they believe in your ideas. And I think that's just a wonderful place to be in, to have more people than, your mom saying that they like your work. it just feels nice, and it allows you to say, all right, well, if we fail, we fail all together. So yeah, that was really nice.
So was it the mentorship that was really important, or just in general the support of the of Jerwood Arts and Photoworks?
The mentorship was great, but it was great in another way. I would say for me, having different mentors was great in seeing different perspectives, different voices. You know, everyone had their own preferences and their own kind of ideas. So that was really exciting in that sense. And even having to prepare to talk about my work for a different audience, for an artist or for a curator. But this kind of safety and support for me came from working directly with Jerwood and Photoworks, and having those regular crits that we had where we would kind of like check-ins where I would say, you know, I'm trying this out. There was a point that I was trying video and I didn't end up using video at the end, but I felt like I could explore that, and that actually ended up influencing my photographs very much.
We also got a few questions coming in regarding your proposals into making an exhibition, and to have a commissioned exhibition. And how did you find producing your work for the exhibition actually? Are there any new ways of working that you have discovered and tested out? I think you mentioned video, Alejandra, but like anything else through this process?
For me, the exhibition was I mean, really exciting to have the opportunity to not have to worry about the money, and to have the opportunity to then really, you know, do the production that you felt was right for your work. For me, that was, you know, that was wonderful to be able to test. Some of my prints were really large, and I felt like they had to be life size, and that was important to the work and the way that I was hoping that the viewer would perceive the work. So for me, having that, you know, that kind of budget, and then also the support again with whom I can check, you know, ideas and have that feedback, was really crucial. I tested out something that I wanted to try out for a while, which was a freestanding piece, and creating this kind of more like sculptural photograph. And that was also something new that I know I would have not done it if I hadn't been part of a supportive environment, both financially and intellectually, if you could call it.
And what about you, Sylvia?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I've been experimenting with video during a residency in the middle of the commission, and at the time I was not yet thinking about the production of the exhibition. And when it came to actually making the videos work in relation to the photographs, well, that was a whole journey. So it was interesting to have so many people to discuss the exhibition with. Renee was so amazing. My mentor was Renee Monsey from Autograph, and we had chats about the exhibition, thinking about the space, because you're given so much freedom to do and to think whatever you like, that it becomes amazing but also quite scary. So we just had a plan of the space, and we're actually thinking about, you know, visitors coming in, and how people would interact with the videos, with the size of the images, and, you know, with the text. Oh, the text was just crazy. I remember discussing the text with Renee the day before it was going into printing. I was in her office, and she was like, "Amazing, you've done a great job with the images, but the design of the text is not good." And like, what? And it was great, because I just love her for this, because she taught me to rethink the whole text, and you know, think of different ways people could engage with it. Because you know, the way I presented it at first was just, as she said, a glorified caption, but then it became something else, like something people could interact with or not interact with, and that was really important. So I just learned so much, from the text to the space to making still photographs work in relation to video, that was another, difficult thing for me.
Yeah, that's interesting and good to know that it was a kind of like a very fruitful conversation that you had throughout the awards. How were you working with Joewood Arts and Photoworks to deliver your work and exhibition?
That was really great because after the production of the exhibition, we started a whole conversation about making the work. So you've all been very supportive in finding people that could help me, for example, edit the videos, which is something I've never done, and working, with subtitles and printing with Spectrum, which was amazing, like an amazing day in Brighton, learning new things, learning how to see my work in print. And then I was able to collaborate with my framer in Peckham, which was very nice and familiar. And yeah, it was just really helpful, like working on the budget to buy the screens, and yeah. Pretty much.
What about you, Alejandra?
Yeah, it was just really wonderful throughout the whole process to have, people that are going to challenge your ideas, that you can trust, that that they're challenging them because they believe in you, and they want you to really grow and succeed. So it's nice to have those conversations that kind of can make you question your practice or your direction, and really push yourself. And then preparing for the exhibition, I'm with Sylvia. Spectrum is amazing, wonderful service. I enjoyed and learned so much from the Spectrum team. So it was really great, having this network from both Jerwood and Photoworks to allow ourselves to then work with new partners that are going to help us with the technical things, and being able to then see different ways of bringing the work to an exhibition space, and just how flexible the whole team was. As Sylvia was saying, it's quite intimidating when you're given a space and then you get like a green light to do whatever you want. It's kind of intimidating, but my experience was very positive in the sense that I tested out different ideas, and both the Jerwood and the Photoworks team was very, very open to my ideas and very supportive, even though I didn't myself knew if it was going to work or not. But the team believed in me, so that was really nice.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And we also got some questions on the impact of the awards on your own practice. So how has the award supported the development of your practice in general? For example, finished work, quality of the work, further opportunities, I guess there were a few, and people you met. Maybe continue with Alejandra.
So yeah, no, it's been really positive. I think after the awards, you feel this kind of sense of like missing the awards, because it's you for a whole year you're in this bubble where you can focus on your work and you've got this support and it's exciting, and then it feels a little bit terrifying. Now what? But things kind of like start coming along, and it's you start seeing the effects. Now looking back, you see the effects of how many of those things came because of those awards. One thing that for me, for example, was very positive was having those 3 exhibitions, the traveling exhibitions in different spaces, and then allowed the work to exist in different ways. And having those very professional installation shots allowed me to then, bring the work with more confidence to editors or curators that I had met either through the exhibitions or later on. And that, immediately kind of the awards gave my work that legitimacy, and it opened conversations that felt much more professional. I didn't feel like a student trying to kind of convince them to look at my work. It suddenly felt like you have these professional exhibitions, and you're having a different kind of conversation. So from that, it opened many doors to have exhibitions abroad, for the work to be acquired by public collections, which is incredibly exciting and something that I would, it would have definitely not happened without the awards. So that is something that definitely gives you a confidence that has a direct impact in your work.
Yeah, I feel absolutely the same. Like, I remember when the exhibition was up and I had that little room and I was inviting everyone to see the exhibition. I was like, and this is it. And it was really amazing. Also, all the connection and opportunities we got towards the award to invite galleries and curators and speak about the work in front of the work in the actual exhibition space. It was amazing. It was just like having, I don't know, a studio visit or something like that. So yeah, that was it was really helpful. Yeah, and everything Alejandra said, like, amazing.
Okay, so I think we're going to move on to some questions that we've had submitted from the audience now. So these are things that people are thinking about during their applications and are kind of key things that they're keen to know. So if I take the first one, we had a question which was, when do you know that you're ready to apply or for your work to be seen? So I don't know, Sylvia or Alejandra, if you had any thoughts on this. I think you've touched a little on kind of the position that you were at when you applied and what felt important. But yeah, I think if there's any thoughts, that would be great.
Guess for me is feeling the urgency to make a body of work. So not applying only because the opportunity is there, but also because there's something you really want to produce. And I guess it's nice the application process in that sense, because you have to write an application for a project that you would like to produce in the future, and not just something vague. So yeah, I guess that would be my only comment.
Yeah, I agree, but also I would also add that you have to also make sure that you're going to benefit from having other voices and giving you opinions and feedback. I think that you have to be excited about that. If if you're not open about that, I don't think you're going to particularly enjoy this process, because I think this process is very much about coming with an open-minded way of wanting to work. And so whether that's the way that you work and you want to continue doing that and pushing a new project, or whether that's a new way of working for you, which is exciting, and that you think that it might allow your work to take directions that you would have not considered and take risks in new and exciting ways. I think for me, that was definitely a key part of it, that I wanted to see where I could end up pushing my work, because I would be working with more people and having more of this kind of collaborative process.
What do you think, Julia, from a selection panelist position as well?
It's kind of like you're looking for that the people know what they're talking about, that they really are encouraged and kind of like show that they really want to be part of it. And I think we mentioned that, or Alejandra mentioned that before, kind of like to that, at one point, like, do I really want this award or not? And I think that kind of like that's what I'm looking for. So when I read through statements, and that's when you kind of like feel whether an artist is ready or not. Well, so you can see it in the interviews as well.
Another thing that I remember from applying to the award is having the application ready and thinking, wow, I'm really excited about this, and it doesn't matter if I win or not, I'm gonna make this project, like, money or not. So I think that's that's also important, that you're really excited about making the work no matter what happens, really.
I think that's it comes back to what you've both said about being honest and kind of being, I guess, sort of really authentic in what you want to do, and being excited by it regardless of if it's for this award or something that it's actually a very genuine and exciting and ambitious development for your practice anyway.
Yeah, I think authenticity is the key as well. What I'm looking for when I'm reading through statements or looking at application.
Brilliant. I've got another audience question that is about this kind of application process, and it is around can you tell us a little bit about the selection process and just anything you learned in that? So I know we've touched a lot on writing the application, but I wonder if there's anything to share around the interview process or anything that you learned or reflected on around that.
Yes, I remember preparing for the interview, having received an email and knowing that a few people had been selected for that process. So thinking really about how I was going to prepare to go into that interview. And I remember talking about my application to my flatmate, so having a chat about that and talking to friends and having them asking me questions about the project I wanted to develop, in a way that you end up deconstructing your application in the moment you produce it as well. And I remember going into the interview and just really having a chat about a project that I wanted to produce and the logistics behind it and the ideas and the references, and that's all you need to do at the interview, really. And another thing I remember, which is a tip, it might not be useful because everything is moving online, but I went into the interview with my USB stick with all of my presentation and images, and then I plug it in and it's not working, and like I'm looking around, there's Aaron Schumer, like, oh, what am I gonna do? And then I remembered I brought in prints because that's what I usually do, and that was the only reason why I was able to present my works. Maybe bring prints, I don't know.
I love that advice. Maybe bring prints just in case. I think it's great advice. Sorry, Harriet.
I was going to just say, yeah, did you have any kind of, it's a while back now, I guess, for you, Alejandra, but yeah, whether there was anything that, did you bring prints?
Yeah, I did bring prints. Yeah, it's been a while, but I remember that day very, very well. I think that many of the things that Sylvia said, I agree with you, Sylvia. I practice a lot at home. I felt like I was an actress trying to perform for a role. And I think that helped in, as Sylvia, you were saying, in deconstructing your project, your intentions, and in really trying to get a better understanding of why do you want this award? Why would it benefit you? And, what are you getting out of it? I think having my partner and friends asking me lots of different questions helped me really go over those questions. And then when you're there in the interview, many don't come as a surprise. You've actually already thought about that. It's not something like that catches you off guard. You've thought about it and you feel much more relaxed. And so once you're there, you feel like you're having a chat. You feel like you can just talk about it. And I think it's important to, again, I'll insist again on this. It's important that you know why you want it, because also if you don't get it, you still know that, well, now you know where you're at as an artist, and now you know that you're going to move forward. You're going to move forward, find other avenues if funding is a very important thing for the project, or if not, you're going to find other ways of getting the mentorship. But I feel like it gives you that kind of confidence when you get to the interview of knowing why you're there. I think it helps a lot.
I think that's such good advice. And I think I always think that practicing on friends or getting them to read applications, as I know has been touched on already, is so useful, particularly if they aren't sort of involved in your practice day to day and don't know it. They sometimes ask the questions that seem really obvious to you, but you maybe aren't articulating the answers as clearly as you realise. And I think that's so useful to just yeah, deconstruct and just really get to the core of what you want to say. So yeah, I think it's brilliant advice, definitely. Is there anything, Julia, you want to add from a selection panelist point of view in terms of, yeah, that process or what you found you good?
Also kind of like, I mean, I never was an artist to have to present my project, but like being in a couple of interviews, I can only advise like really practice the interviews with friends and kind of maybe make some mock-up questions so you're prepared, and also mock up maybe the interview scenario that you maybe become very nervous suddenly, what you haven't expected before, or kind of like find ways where you kind of how to relax in these kind of situations.
I have to say that I have a habit of, before interviews, going into a toilet cubicle and smiling in quite a terrifying way to myself for a few minutes, because whether I intend it or not, it releases some endorphins and I tend to then be smiling or at least feeling a little better for the interview. But if you saw me, it is quite creepy. So, okay. Julia, do you want to take some of the next audience questions? There's quite a few about photography and what we kind of think about in terms of that format.
Oh, there's the next one, from the audience question. Can you apply if you started a project already or the proposal is part of a bigger project? Which is a good question because it comes in quite frequently nowadays, kind of when people turn to us by email. And it's strictly, we say, no, you have to start with a new project, but we obviously know that kind of like sometimes new projects can develop out of an older series you've done before. And so you should be very clear that it is a new part you're working on, and maybe find different ways of kind of like presenting that or developing it even further. So that's just a crucial part. You can't say, listen, I've been working for this project for the past 5 years or like even 2 years, or but it's also clear to us that you come with ideas and that they don't just, erupt suddenly, but it's part of a research process. And maybe you've already done some photographs, but it's really something that you should kind of like see as a kind of like a core project you start within this kind of 12 months or develop within this 12 months.
I think Alejandra had given a really good description of how that worked in relation to your project, because although I think you'd expressed that some of that work and the ideas and research were there and the connection was already there, it's actually the ambition for it and the way that you could approach it was radically changed by doing the award and actually allowed you to experiment in a way that wouldn't have been possible. So there's quite a distinctive step change in the way that you were developing that research.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, for me, for example, for the bodies of work that I develop, usually I work with communities with whom I need time to develop, a relationship with. So when I applied to the awards, I had been spending the last year developing that relationship so that then I can start making the work. So the photographs that I had taken were, if anything, more anecdotal, that's the word. It's like an anecdote. So it would be things, it's part of the research, but it was part of also developing a relationship with the group. Many of the photographs are for the group itself, for their own events. So it was more about really starting a new way of working and approaching that kind of body of work. So.
But I think it's also crucial is to allow the work to develop and even kind of like take a different path. And, just even if you have the idea in your head, this kind of like be allowed to get inspired and for yourself. Yeah. I think you both, like within the process of the work, you both experienced a lot of change and changing the proposal from the initial proposal into what you can see in the exhibition.
I think it's a really important part of having that time and that focus and support around you for things to change. Somebody very close to me always says, if you can write it down and see exactly how you're going to do it, surely it's actually then less interesting to do it. Like you want those changes to be present, and those challenges and those interruptions that strengthen it or take it in a new direction.
And I think that kind of a bit leads us to the next question as well. How much preparation in terms of confirming, reaching out to speculative partners, residencies, access to sites and working with groups of people, etc., would you recommend putting in place before applying? I generally think kind of like maybe reaching out, and what Alejandra did, kind of like already developing a relationship with a certain group could be good and crucial. And if you decide, okay, I'm going to do the project anyhow, like I'm really keen of doing that, then you could maybe kind of like already confirm certain things. But also, you know, it's just what I said before, just allow the project to develop. And if you confirm everything and kind of like have reached out to certain groups and have set everything in stone, maybe you're not as free to kind of like change the direction. So I suggest to have your ideas ready, to have some contacts ready if you need them for your project, but don't confirm anything yet. Just to kind of like, kind of allow something to kind of go with the flow, maybe at least in the beginning, in terms of ideas.
I wonder if there's anything interesting there in terms of if your project or proposal, is entirely dependent on something, whether there's how much artists applying might need to give reassurance that it's possible. That sounds quite abstract actually, but I'm thinking around some of the challenges of the last year of COVID and things, whether it's useful for artists to kind of articulate any alternatives or any kind of ways they see that developing if certain things like travel are more challenging, or connections in person.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, especially now in these uncertain times, we can't predict whether we can actually travel next year. Having a kind of like what we would say COVID safe alternative would be good to present as well, especially for the panel if they're kind of hesitating.
I think definitely something as well at the interview stage, any concerns around anything like that would be part of the chat, to understand kind of, what those parameters are. So one of the questions that I always think is a really interesting one is an audience question, which is what type of photography are you looking for? I think that's such a hard question. So I was going to put it out there and hope somebody has a great answer for it.
I mean, what I'm looking for, and that we mentioned that before, is it needs to be authentic, and maybe what we can rule out, because it's an art prize, is that we're not looking for kind of like pure fashion or pure photojournalistic photography, but you know, it should have like a artistic background. And a project and photography that like that is kind of like, you have to be true to yourself and what is dear to you.
I think we have an FAQ about this actually, which kind of talks a little around some of the breadth of what that could look like in terms of different ways of working with archive or analog or digital or different ways. But there's something, we talk about artists working with photography and photography being a core of that practice, it being at the heart of what you're doing and the way you're thinking. But I think we're really excited about how that can be experimental as well, and how that can shape your thinking in different areas. And it's really interesting, I think, for Sylvia and Alejandra, who both experimented with moving image in relation to photography and in combination. And Alejandra, I know it didn't end up being part of your final presentation, but it's something that came into that process, and that was part of being able to take risks within it.
Yeah, and actually, yeah, exactly. I found that very, that was something really great about the award, that the team was very supportive in that sense. I wanted to explore with video and with text. Again, those two things didn't end up in the exhibition because I didn't feel like I was ready to exhibit work in that medium. But it's something that, for example, now it's been what, 2-3 years later, I'm exploring and I'm still working on that concepts, particularly the text related to that work. I'm working now on a book. And so it really kind of allowed that seed to be planted. And I just needed more time because the work doesn't end when the award ends, which I think is also exciting, that you can continue growing with that body of work or with other bodies of work, but it's all kind of a journey that ends up influencing your work. So for me, I'm now definitely seeing that kind of blossom happening now, of those other mediums that came from photography, but that extended and expanded to other ones.
I really like that, the slower burn, that actually the impact the development and experimentation has. It's not just about that show or about the tour or about what happens in those 12 months, it's what it can do in the future. And Sylvia, I know, I assume when you were first putting your proposal, you didn't anticipate you'd be working with moving image and text in the way that you ended up developing within your work.
No, definitely not. It all happened as a very natural project. So in the middle of the commission, I applied for a residency in Senegal. So I had the chance to spend a month in complete isolation, which was amazing because at the beginning of the commission, I put so much pressure on myself and comparing my work to other people, because you just watch what's happening online and you're exposed to so much work that you naturally end up doing that. So that month in isolation, just reading and thinking and being completely absorbed in that environment was a great opportunity. And I started working with video because I was in rural Senegal and I had not access to a full-length mirror. So I started using videos as a way of seeing myself in the act of producing those self-portraits. So the way I use video is really not too different from photography. The videos are really short, but that was a different way of working, thinking of the relationship between those two mediums. If I think about the triptych I did, where I narrated a scene throughout, 2 still images and the video in the middle, was really thinking about what is a complete idea of visualizing a scene and thinking about memory and how we really record memories in our heads, which is, still images, but also in motion. So, in oh my God, I'm talking way too much. Sorry, I'm on a loop.
It is a wonderful loop, and it makes a lot of sense. The video, the way that you talk about memory and that use of video actually being more around the image and the way that kind of works together, that feels like it speaks to me and what I kind of see in that work.
Yeah, it was really thinking about how you experience the still image, but then when the video starts to play, then you have a more complete experience of that idea.
Fantastic. I think we've probably just got time for one last question. Julia, I don't know if there was any audience questions that stood out to you, and we should be able to kind of respond to any others either on email, or if you want to book an advice session or get in touch on social media if you have questions that haven't been touched on. But we'll just take one more and close up, I think.
I think one thing maybe is like, how does the mentoring process work? That could be maybe a crucial one. So we have each artist will receive a lead mentor, and where you have a couple of sessions where you kind of like discuss the process of your work and the development of your work, and then you will have extra session with external mentors that could kind of like guide you whatever you think is necessary for the awards or for the development also of your project. So you could speak to maybe a gallerist, or you could speak to a person like a media coach that helps you to be confident for artist talks, because we see this award not only to produce an exhibition, that's one part, but also it's kind of, it should help you to develop your career as well and to develop yourself as an artist. And that is part of the mentoring process and what we try to establish.
Fantastic. Okay, we're going to finish up, but quick fire, any top tips for artists applying? A positive note to leave on, hopefully. Let's start with Sylvia. Do you have any tips for anyone?
So yeah, my initial tip would be to experiment and, you know, think beyond what you usually do and be ambitious. And then, yeah, focus on your research and see the opportunities you have around, being it archives you can visit or libraries you can gain access to. Was it 3 advices?
As many as you got, no.
I mean, those are my top 2.
I think they're great ones. Alejandra, is there anything that stands out for you?
I would say for applying, just give yourself time to work on the application and to ask yourself why. I think I've said it 20 times, but yeah, I would say that's crucial. And then, yeah, honesty, be honest with yourself. Why is this going to be good for you? And if you get it, be open and enjoy the process. Really allow the process to take you in different directions and take risks. So be open to be ready to take risks, I would say.
Fantastic. Julia, anything on your mind that you'd want as a tip?
Kind of like be authentic when you apply, and also kind of like when you pick the project you want to apply with. And then I think also it's important. I mean, what we do is we give an outline and kind of like a platform for you to work with, but it's also important that you're driven and you want to work with it and kind of like want to carry on.
Fantastic.
So yourself with the awards then.
I think my tips would agree with all of yours. I think definitely the why and the why now feels really important when reading applications, is understanding that context of why now and how this would support. So yeah, I think that, and being ambitious with where you think you can go. Think about the potential of ideas. I'm always really interested in that potential of ideas and where it might go. If you don't know where the endpoint is, that's not necessarily a problem at all, because there's a lot of support to get you there. So yeah. So thank you firstly so much to Alejandra and Sylvia and Julia, all being so honest and open and sharing thoughts. And I think we're all really hoping that this helps lots of you with thinking about your applications and if this is right for you, and just any questions that you have. And thank you so much for watching and joining us, and for being interested in the Joewood Photoworks Awards. And I'm sure we hope to read applications from lots of you.
Good luck, everyone.